everyone, welcome back. Come on, are you awake?
Yeah.
Hello. There we go. Okay, so now we have the Angular team Q&A. Up on the screen here, you can still ask your questions on Silo, and the event code is AngularConnect, so keep the questions coming in. So I think without further ado, we'll actually start with the first question.
Me?
Carmen.
Ooh, okay. So what is the most underrated Angular feature in your opinion?
And we've had this question in front of us for 5 minutes.
The thing is that like all of the features are really well received in the community. I can't think of many that actually are not being used, because if they weren't really being used, either we would have been talking about them a lot already and you'd know already, or we'd have removed them because they weren't important. I can't think of anything that's really missing, like missing attention.
Resolver?
The resolver was shouted out from the audience.
There are definitely some features that I feel like aren't used enough. I don't know if I would call them underrated. One of them I think that I've been asked about before is structural directives, and the ability to kind of define a little DSL or microsyntax inside the expression of the binding expression of a structural directive. You can do some really kind of fluent APIs with that, and I never see it actually used in the wild.
I really like ICU expressions, and no one knows about it. And it's really a pain to integrate, so please use it because...
Okay. So
actually, I tell you what, I just had a moment from listening to all of the talks and what's come in at Ivy. One of the really underrated aspects of Angular, which is achievable but hard, is lazy loading. Yeah, and I think that one of the whole points of Ivy is to try and make that more accessible to you so that you can then start to use it even more in your apps. Because at the moment, there's a very limited amount of use of it. Not because it's not a good idea, but because it just hasn't been quite so accessible.
If only we had a library like OC Lazy Load for Angular.
For those who don't know, OC Lazy Load was made by a fantastic developer based in Lyon.
For AngularJS.
Yeah, of course, for the most important framework.
Oh. Okay.
Pre-2014.
We ready to move on to the next question? Okay. What would you rip out of Angular and do different if you had one breaking change for free? Dun, dun, dun.
That's a really good question. I mentioned ng modules several times already. I think ng module is something that if we didn't have to, we wouldn't introduce. But back in the days, there was a real need for it. And with Ivy and other changes in Angular over the years, we're working towards making those optional. So that would be probably at the top of my list.
What I like about this question actually is it says, what would you do differently? And I think we would probably, ng module, the way it works tends to be kind of confusing to newer Angular developers. And so even if we weren't to rip it out completely, I think we would probably change how it works a little bit and simplify things.
Yeah.
There's one thing which I would like to rip out, and that is the original version of ng upgrade, which we refer to as ng upgrade dynamic. That was written with all the best intentions, but almost immediately we realized that it was so much better if you could AOT compile it, and so then we created a new version, but we couldn't call it ng upgrade because that would have been a breaking change. So we created ng upgrade static, and then had to keep ng upgrade, which we would have liked to rename to ng upgrade dynamic, but we couldn't because that would have been a breaking change. So we're now left with this situation where we have two ng upgrade paths, which are quite similar but different enough that you can't use them together, but similar enough that people get confused which one they should use. So that's definitely, if we'd had thought it a little bit further ahead, then we would have skipped ng upgrade dynamic and gone straight to static. And George Kalpakas would agree with me on the live stream.
Anybody else wants to suggest some? Erin, do you have some?
Well, I don't know if it would like remove it, but the one thing I always have a trouble with is zones. I keep trying to get rid of it on my own, and it would be very nice to be able to build it initially without it, so that all the code I've written so far continues working, and I don't have to like do it again without zones. So that would be what I would try and remove, but I don't know how you'd fix it, so I'll leave that to these two.
I think I have one. If I could rip it out and do it somehow differently, I don't know how differently, the way by which templates, CSS, and lazy modules are loaded. It's kind of complicated under the hood, and I would like that to be more visible and more easier for people to play with.
Okay, next question. With all the developers working on Ivy, what will be future features for version 8 and beyond?
I can take this one. So everybody's looking at me. So Ivy is primarily the top priority item for us right now, just because it's a high risk. We want to get it out of the way, and many other things are blocked on Ivy. We already mentioned many improvements with lazy loading, with internationalization. Lots of improvements we have in the works for tooling and for the CLI, but those things won't be able to launch until Ivy's done. So right now, Ivy is the top priority, and once Ivy is done, we'll see how much time is left, because we adopted time-based releases, which is a really good thing for us, because it helps us set expectations. So we will see how much time is left in 8, and based on that, we'll see what we can squeeze in.
So it's kind of a follow-up question. Could you demystify the team structure behind core Angular parts? Is it hundreds of devs? Is it all Google?
We have four main groups. We have the framework group, which is in charge of the compiler, the runtime, forms, router, HTTP, and many other things. We have a group that is focused on material design and the component dev kit. And then we have a group that is focused on tooling, on the CLI. And last group that is not so much relevant to this crowd, but is very much relevant to the Google customers, is a TypeScript group of people where what they are focused on is integration of the TypeScript compiler into the internal build pipeline. And part of that work is also reused in the Bazel pipeline in the CLI. But it's not hundreds. In terms of numbers, I want to say, if we include all the people that work in the office and remotely, I think it's about 40 people, plus many awesome contributors from all over the world that help us with code reviews, filing issues, or pull requests. So many of you.
Next question. So if I have a page with many Angular elements, and they all have large dependencies, do they all end up bringing their own versions, and I end up with a heavy page?
I can take this if you want. So this is actually a choice in how you build the bundles for the elements. If you are a library author publishing an Angular element and you want your element to be drop in onto a page, no other dependencies needed, then you will probably bundle it and package up everything that it depends on, including the Angular parts, and try to get that bundle as small as possible. So it's a really good incentive for you not to use big, large dependencies when you want this thing to be lightweight to load it. If you're publishing, if you were, for example, to take all of material and try to package them all up as Angular elements, this probably wouldn't be a good approach. What you would want to do is build a bundle that has all of the core dependencies that they're all going to use, including much of the Angular runtime, and then each individual element is only the code for that element in a bundle. And so you would install the runtime on the page as a script tag, and then each element that you use, you would put on the page as a script tag. So it's really up to the person packaging all of these elements to get the build working in the right way, to not end up with a situation where you're shipping the same dependency many, many times.
The dependency that occurred to me was RxJS.
Yes.
You don't want to have like 100 RxJSs on your page.
Cool. So is there any progress or ongoing development on the project to run Angular runtime within a web worker?
Yes. Am I the one who's... Okay. It sucks that I get to answer all the questions. I want to share the stage with others. We've done some prototype with Worker DOM. Worker DOM is a project that creates DOM APIs within the web worker. If anybody's worked with web workers, you know that DOM APIs are not available there. Our current platform web worker creates this custom abstraction that allows us to make DOM manipulation from within web worker, but there are some limitations, and especially creating very rich custom elements is complicated because you have to build it in a way that is web worker specific. With the worker DOM approach, we would be in a position where we could write the code just once, both for the non-web worker cases and for the web worker cases, and it would work. So this is the long-term approach that we are looking at, and we're just doing the research and trying to figure out what is the best direction for web workers in the future.
When would you recommend not using Angular? Or when would you recommend using another major framework?
Thanks, Igor. Yeah, Aaron can answer as well. For me, it would be not using Angular as much when it has less control over the page. So trying to sprinkle it in right now is not necessarily the best use case for Angular. So if you just have, one grid on a page that you want to load, and the rest of the page isn't just a static HTML or a jQuery-based site, I don't think that's a good use case. Maybe with Ivy that can change, so we can ship something a lot smaller. So yeah, I think there's other frameworks that are better at that right now.
Yeah, and to add some more information on this, I think it comes down to what does your team value in a framework. So every single framework has different advantages, and Angular has ones, and Polymer has other ones. And depending on what you want in your development experience and what you want to actually ship to the browser, it's a team-specific just choice of what framework to use. So what a lot of teams end up doing is they write them all out, they write all the features, they do a side-by-side comparison, and then they figure out what values they want. And that's probably the best advice for what to use.
And Erin would know because she has to support all of them.
Angular doesn't work with IE8, does it? So if you have to use IE8, then there's this really good framework called AngularJS. It's one of the major frameworks out there. That's definitely a use case for not using Angular. Sorry, I always end up doing the flippant answers after a really sensible one from Erin.
I think also to some extent it's an organizational decision. Like if you have a big organization that already has a lot of internal infrastructure to support solution A or solution B, if you come in and try to force yet another solution, unless you're ready to support it and fully integrate it into the development cycle of the entire organization, it might be a lot of pain to sign up for. So you might also consider, what are other projects around you using, and use that as a guideline.
We lost the
our questions.
Hold on.
I remember one. What are the plans, the future plans for? Well, the question said protector, but I guess it's protractor.
Oh. Protractor. Okay. Protractor. We currently what the things that are on the roadmap are updates to the latest WebDriver. There have been many changes to the WebDriver, and we're working on upgrading that. Other than that, we don't plan to make any major changes in Protractor in this year, just because of the focus on Ivy. And then next year we have a few more things planned, but right now we're just focusing on Ivy. So I don't expect, besides the WebDriver, I don't expect any changes to Protractor this year.
Okay, now we've got our questions back. With the build-up hype and high expectations surrounding Ivy, do you feel it will be able to live up to the hype, or is it time to manage some expectations? That's a very good question.
It better. Yeah. This is a huge bet for us. So we are very encouraged with the results we see so far. So I'm not sure if it's a hype, but we definitely have very high expectations. We're expecting a lot from Ivy. Managing expectations, that to me comes down to the timelines. We're not going to release Ivy until it's ready. We are hoping that we can get there as soon as possible. I kind of indirectly suggested that it would be in version 8. That's a goal. I am not ready yet to make a commitment that it's going to be 8. If it's ready by 8, then it's going to be in 8. But yeah, the timelines is probably the biggest expectation that we need to manage.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, I have a lot of high expectations of my own for Ivy, just actually working on the framework. And one thing to note is that those extend far beyond the initial release. It's not just getting Ivy out the door and it makes everything magical. Ivy really unlocks a lot of potential for us to do cool things with Angular far down the roadmap.
Cool. So, sorry. Which dinosaur would you be and why?
I think we'd like to hear from some people at the back.
Oh, God. I apologize. I don't know the correct name for this dinosaur. I only remember it from...
Call it the color if you want.
Oh. Well, I don't see it. It's like the long neck that's a vegetarian. Oh, okay.
Stegosaurus?
Diplodocus?
Diplodocus.
Diplodocus.
Diplodocus?
Brontosaur, but that doesn't exist anymore.
I would be that one because I like to eat vegetables.
I'd like to be the Processorix, just given my focus on process. I just made that up.
I'd want to be a T-Rex. They have really short arms, so then they can do really big bench press, and I'd be awesome.
There was the T-Rex and Velociraptor sort of hybrid from Jurassic World. That would be pretty cool.
Okay.
Pterodactyl, for sure. I want to fly.
Eagle.
I think it would be some kind of pink dinosaur. I don't know what name it will be, but just something, to contrast in the green forest.
Something really cute, I think. Cute and fluffy, like all dinosaurs.
With feathers.
Archaeopteryx, there you go.
I would be the one that looks like a tattoo, the small with the big carapace. They look really cool, and I had one when I was a child.
Wasn't it extinct already?
Yeah, I had a small one.
As a pet?
Yeah. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. We are not supposed to talk about real dinosaurs.
Okay. So, Null's NX monorepo structure is elegant and feels like the approach should be fully integrated into the CLI. What do you think?
I think that's a great question. Okay. NX does a very good job, but they also spend a fair bit of time maintaining that structure and customizing it to make sure it works really well with all of their clients. In our case, when we're trying to figure out, okay, how should we support large projects, we have, for us, rather obvious example of actually doing it through Bazel, because it's something that we already use and that we already know works really well for a very big quantity of scenarios. So if the choice is between investing time in trying to move big projects towards Bazel, which we know will probably work for a lot of situations, or use NX that we know is fairly new, because when you look at it, NX just developed their approach recently over the past few years. between that and Bazel, we kind of tend for Bazel. For us, we feel like we can do more and that we can do everything that we want to do with it.
Okay, next one. Has Google finished all the AngularJS to Angular migration projects, or how much more is there to do?
I can. Do you want to start?
You go ahead. Okay, so I focused on this over the summer as an intern, and from the work that I did, I feel like I kind of scraped the surface. There's a lot more that can be done. There's a tremendous amount of AngularJS developers still developing AngularJS out there today. There's still AngularJS within Google. So there's definitely a lot of potential to continue doing projects. We're hoping to start focusing more on like automation tools. A lot of the process could be automated, but it's difficult. So trying to find more APIs that are already automating part of the migration process is what we're doing right now.
Yeah, and I mentioned in the keynote that while there is way more active development happening with Angular than AngularJS these days, we just reached a point where we have more Angular code than AngularJS, which also suggests we still have a lot of AngularJS code at Google. And there are different teams going through migrations, and we are building some internal tooling to help with some of this. We already have some tooling to help with JavaScript to TypeScript migration. A lot of this tooling is very specific to how Google uses AngularJS and how we use, especially JavaScript. The JavaScript is very different than the JavaScript that the external community used at the times of AngularJS. So some of those tools are not directly applicable, so we cannot just take them and give them out to the community. But we're looking for opportunities where there are tools that we're building internally to help the internal teams that we could externalize. And once we have something that we would think is useful, then we'll share it with the community.
So you said Ivy unlocked some cool things far down the roadmap. What are these cool things? Maybe we can go around and some people can say what cool things they think are coming up. Some people we haven't heard from.
Internationalization service would be really great. A lot of people are waiting for that. So being able to use translation inside of your code.
Yeah, there are two that I'm excited about in particular. One of them is the potential for higher order components. We have some function that'll wrap a component and changes behavior. Imagine you have a presentation component that displays some data that it gets as an input. You can wrap it with and create a version of that component that reads the data from NGRX store and passes it to the input, and your component doesn't have to know anything about that. That would be cool. Another one is the potential for templates that are not written as HTML and run through our compiler. But instead, if library authors provide some other kind of abstraction that boils down to IV instructions under the hood, you could imagine some cool like dynamic form use cases working with that. So both of those I'm fairly excited for.
Well, he took the two I wanted to share.
I agree.
One of the things that we didn't mention related to Ivy is that with Ivy, we now have compile time constants, which allows us to compile out code that we don't want to have in production, which allows us to put in instrumentation and logging into the framework. This is something we currently don't have in Angular, and we would love to have. And with this feature, we'll be able to add integration with timelines or with just logging and give you more information about what is happening in the runtime. And with Ivy, this is something that we can do and will do.
So you mean useful error messages?
That too, but that's a little bit separate. Just logging and instrumentation is one thing. Useful error messages is a separate topic.
I think, other than maybe some of the ones that were already mentioned, the ability to start to bundle very, very small, to be able to actually use Angular to do small widgets on a page and not feel like you're constrained by the size that we ship. So starting to be able to ship things like date pickers, or using Angular elements to ship really small pieces of code that can be used anywhere.
From my end, what I like is that the output is much cleaner and it's more human readable compared to the current AOT compilations.
Sure. It can make lazy loading a bit less magical, depending on how it's done. So since that was one of the things that I'd like to redo if I had the choice, that I'm excited about that, yes.
You're looking at me for next one, or?
Probably shipping Angular material pre-compiled as a release output, so you don't have to compile everything again, and it just works out of the box, and it's probably also speeds up your build process.
I'm going to add mixing and matching AOT and JIT compiled components. This is something that will allow you to dynamically assemble applications. I just talked to some awesome guys about their application, which is fully driven using a configuration. And the way they do it is really good, but with the ability to mix and match AOT and JIT components, you will be able to generate components on the fly, and that will give you even more options. That's really cool.
Okay, so next question is, so as a parent and developer, I feel a clash between family and work. Any advice on fulfilling coding potential without sacrificing family time?
Is this from Stephen Fluin? Says Stephen down there.
I was actually thinking exactly the same thing.
Do we have a show of hands of who's a parent here?
Yep.
It's kind of like the front row. So do we all feel a clash as well? I think inevitably there's going to be a clash, isn't there? You've got priorities in your life, and when you have responsibilities to more than one thing, you have to find a compromise between those two things. And everyone has to find their own balance that works for them and their family and the person that they're with. Personally, I'm quite lucky because my wife's always been very supportive, and I've always been the one that looks after the child, so I kind of pushed my priorities much more towards the childcare side, which I really appreciated the opportunity to do that. And now that the children are getting older, I'm able to then push back towards the work side, which has worked really well. And I think the Angular team's been incredibly supportive to allow me to do that. I'm not sure if there are many employers or clients that can cope with that kind of flexibility that I've been given. So I'm really lucky. So perhaps I've been the outside of the norm.
So your advice is go work for Google?
I maybe. Who knows? I recommend working for Google. It looks like a pretty good deal from where I can stand.
I think for me, one of the things is just segmenting the time and making sure to actually set aside family time. I have 4 kids, so being at home. In the past, I've done the thing of work all day, work all night, work all weekend, and you kind of watch your kids' lives go by. So at least setting aside something has been successful for me. Making sure that they always have some time that's just for them is pretty important, and it's important for me too. You get burned out not doing it that way.
My solution was simple. I got my son to code as well, and so we just paired program. But on a more serious note, I think it comes down to figuring out the right priorities. What's important to work on. More importantly, what is the work you will not do, right? So it comes down to figuring out your priorities and work on the more important stuff.
I don't have any kids.
Me neither.
Not me.
No.
Yeah, I just stopped watching TV. I had a lot of time suddenly. So.
Yeah. And now you watch the children's programs.
Yeah, no. So when I started working for Google as a contractor, I I'm really lucky because I can choose how many hours I want to work. So I actually work from home, meaning that I get 2 more hours that I don't spend on transportation, and I work less than before as well. I do less, yeah, like 30 hours a week probably, which is great because now I have more time. I'm the one who brings my daughter to the nanny and picks her up at night. So yeah. So maybe you should just find someone who will respect that you need more time.
Yeah. My general rule is family first, but obviously now I'm spending 2.5 weeks in Europe without my family, so it sounds a little weird. There are times when you need to make sacrifices, but in general, if you look at this long term, I just want to make sure that I never feel sorry that I didn't spend enough time with my kids and with my family, because that would be bad. If there's 1 month in the year where I travel more, okay, I can explain that to them and I can deal with it. But I don't think it's something I could do long term and every month. So, finding the right balance and finding people that you work with that are flexible, that understand this is important. We have a large team and we all understand that everybody has a family. So if your child is sick or you need some more time, sure, it's totally understandable. But there are also sometimes, just before AngularConnect, there might be a lot of prep work that needs to happen. So we will probably spend more time at work than usual. So finding just the right balance and make sure that the expectations are clear with both your coworkers and your family really helps.
Yeah, so what you shouldn't do is decide to redesign the entire rendering engine for your framework, because that takes a lot of time out from your family. Yeah? Just remember your kids grow up, so it's a limited period of your life when you can be a parent and have an active role in their lives. No one lies on their deathbed wishing they'd spent more time at work, I think. So as much as you've got to bring in the bread and make things work at home, you've got to keep a balance. Balance is the key.
It's this kind of weird to me. I have no kids, but I do spend a lot of time thinking about how to get the most out of my personal work time. And for me, the question to that is, you cut no family time. You treat your work time as a finite resource and realize that maybe you get like 2 to 3 hours of awesome work a day and the rest of it's just less valuable. You make sure to get those 2 or 3 and then just realize that you need the other time away from work to recharge and not burn out.
Cool. So, are there plans to make form groups, I think that's meant to be typable, generic, like form group user?
I actually know exactly about this question. No, I did not write it.
You asked the question.
He just doesn't want to be accountable for the typo.
We had an open source contributor named Fabian, who's worked with the Angular team quite a bit. He helps out a lot in our Gitter channel. And he worked on a PR for this and put in a lot of the effort to make it happen. Unfortunately, we just ran into a blocking issue with TypeScript where the way you do this backwards compatibly, right, is you make form group have a type parameter, but the type parameter defaults to any. And there were certain edge cases in existing code where TypeScript was not picking up the default value of the type parameter, and so it would create an error in a place where there wasn't an error before. And so we had to give up on the effort because we couldn't get past that. That was a while ago, though, and I haven't looked at that TypeScript bug in a while. We filed it with the TypeScript team. We should go back and check and see if we can actually land that now.
Can you explain how issues are handled on GitHub? How are they prioritized?
So I actually gave a talk about this earlier today, where we talked about the process and execution, which is a very important aspect, especially as we grow as a community. We are putting a lot of focus and cadence into it. It's one of the reasons I got hired into Google last October. So short of it is that there's a few things we're doing, right? So one is we go through a triage process every single week, a couple of hours a week. We lock ourselves up in a room, go through the issues as well as the PRs and actually triage them. Triage basically means categorizing them and rationalizing them so we can focus our attention on the right priority. So that's one thing we do. The second thing we also do is that once the issues are triaged, we actually pick the top priority issues and try to include them in our sprint plans. We run 2-week sprint plans, and with all the other competing priorities that we have, of course, such as Ivy, we try and focus on the top priority issues and get them incorporated in our sprint plan. The third thing we are in the process of doing, of course, there's more work left to be done, is to really enable a seamless contribution process for the community so you guys can actually fix bugs yourself and give back to the community, right? So I talked about that as well this morning, and part of that is making the process easier as well. So in terms of making contributions, how do we make the process easier than what it is today? We are making progress. There is work still left to be done, so stay tuned.
So you should check out our YouTube channel in the next couple of days because those talks will be uploaded.
Yeah, I think just one minor thing to add to that. I was talking to somebody today whose issue got marked fixed by Ivy. So if you're logging issues, one of the, as Manu said, we do this triage process, and one of the things that gets done with the issues is we determine sort of what effort it's going to take to fix it. If that issue basically just automatically goes away with Ivy, you may get this fixed by Ivy label. We'll leave it open, and it will eventually be closed when Ivy lands. But it's when you see that label, it's something that probably is really an issue. Like, we can't close it now, but we can't put the engineering effort into fixing it in Angular currently. We just, by default, get it fixed in Ivy. So there are a number of issues that are getting that label right now.
Cool, that's good to know. So for all, what are some favorite Chrome extensions that you use and or could suggest?
I have one, not related to Angular or anything like that, but it's called Momentum, and it's basically, it takes over your new tabs, and I guess why I like it is the bottom has a quote, the middle has like your mission for the day, so you can type in like, I am going to solve this problem today, and then the side has a to-do list. So every time I open a new tab, I see a pretty picture, I see what I'm supposed to be focusing on, and all the tasks. You use it too? It's amazing, and the pictures are so pretty. So it's like nice nature scenes and like buildings and stuff. Momentum, yeah. It's great.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
I love GitHub Refined that Dinosaur wrote. It adds a lot of cool features to GitHub, and I actually use that a lot.
I really like spaces. The nature of my work requires me to switch context quite a lot. And with that, I have lots of tabs open all the time. If Chrome team ever needs to stress test Chrome, I'm probably one of the people that they can come to. And one of the extensions I found that helps me manage this is spaces where I can create window, call it like this is a code review space. And all of the tabs for the code reviews that I'm working on can be open there, and then I can close that window, and the extension will remember what tabs were open at what position, and I can restore the space. And so this way I can have multiple spaces, one for each context. So I can have an Ivy space, I can have a space for some internal work I'm working on, I can have a space for email or whatever, and easily close and open these without having too many tabs open all the time.
There's two, and I remember the name of neither. One of them lets me like close the window or move to the next tab or whatever by making right click and then dragging down or dragging to the right or making a circle, silly things like that. And another one, which I think is way more useful, it allows you to, when you need like to split your console in half, it's a similar thing that it just moves your current tab to another window, and it's really good when you have like setups with large screens, like I want this one to the right, this one to the left, coordinate what I'm doing.
Yeah, on Angular Material we really care about accessibility, and there's a Chrome extension called Axe, just AXE with a capital X. It does sort of an accessibility audit of your page, and it's really useful just to get like an initial idea of how much work needs to be put in. Of course, you have to check it with a screen reader afterwards, but it's a very good starting point.
Nice. So if I want to bind CSS to DOM elements, with directives to benefit from CSS encapsulation without having a template button input. Will this be possible someday?
Unless anybody wants to take this one. I actually discussed this issue with Jeremy, who's the tech lead on Angular Material. This is one of the top features on Jeremy's list that he wants us to work on once Ivy lands. So this is a really good feature, and it's at the top of our list after Ivy.
So you showed how Ivy can lazy load components, but dynamic imports are not supported by IE. How can we solve it, apart from not using IE?
Do you want to take this, or?
No.
So, okay.
I can take it if you want.
Sure.
Yeah. So our demo used ES dynamic import, which is not in actually ES 2015. It's in one of the future specs. But you don't actually have to use that for lazy loading. You can use system import, or you can use Webpack as a loader, any one of those in order to fetch the bundle. Really what the demo is about is the fact that you can take an Angular bundle that was built completely independently of the application and load it into an existing Angular context and start interacting with it and rendering components out of it. And that's something that was difficult to impossible to do before.
Also, if you're using CLI, even though you author dynamic import, the build pipeline will down-level it to the appropriate language polyfill. In the case of CLI, we would be using Webpack APIs to do the dynamic loading, so it would still work on IE. So even though you author the code in the modern way, it would still run on IE if you down-level your code to ES5, which is what IE needs.
Now, Jason's demo was actually built with Webpack, so it would have worked in IE.
Do you know what the impact Ivy will have on the size of some of your larger projects? I guess so.
We don't have solid numbers, or we don't have numbers that we feel confident sharing yet, because there are still issues that we need to work through. But I'll just say that the results we are seeing are encouraging. Once we're ready to share some numbers, we will.
Cool. Do you think Bazel will be integrated into the Angular CLI in the future? And if so, when?
My answer is yes, I think that'll happen. I think that'll happen with a lot of Angular Lab stickers, like a bunch of them. It's very experimental. But I think that we're going to do it with, like we did with most things in Angular CLI, which is we mark it as experimental, we iterate over it, we work over the user experience, and we make sure that it works well for the overwhelming majority of cases and then we make it stable.
What was it when?
Oh, you might see something very experimental in 7.x, but like, don't hold me to it. Hold Igor to it or something. But we are like, that's the direction that we're working on.
Yeah, we still have a long way to go. We'll make Bazel an option in CLI, and this is just a way for us to make it easier to share Bazel with early access customers. We don't expect anybody to start switching to Bazel anytime soon. We still have a lot of work to do, and by having an option in CLI, we'll be able to get more feedback from people, which is very valuable to us. So it's coming, but unless you have one of the people that are signing up for the early access, it's probably not something that you will need to pay too much attention to.
Will there be some way of server-side rendering for Angular elements?
There already is.
Tell us more.
No. So Angular elements are just custom elements that are supported by Domino. So if you're using Domino with the right polyfills, there's nothing that will prevent you. In fact, Shopping Express, one of the Google applications that we have that uses server-side rendering, uses Angular elements in combination with Universal.
So from a security point of view, will Ivy provide any benefits or drawbacks?
Yes and no. If you use the AOT mode, no. If you start doing JIT compilation in production, then you will. There's a potential that if you take user input and generate component templates and expressions using the user input, you might have this might have security implications. So it's really this is just if you use JIT mode with Ivy in combination with AOT, and you're taking user input and directly generate expressions out of that. That might have implications, but other than that, it's business as usual.
But you can use the sanitizer.
Not for templates.
Not for templates?
I mean, you can, but it's not what it's meant for.
For translation, at least, if you use runtime translations and you bind something on attributes, you can use the sanitizer.
As Angular is good for enterprise development, how would you say you could help smaller projects or products who want to use Angular?
Use the CLI. It's a great tool for getting you started and for moving you along and keeping your team, even if it's a small team, it gives you the structure that you need. So you don't have to have necessarily a very high-level architect that's going to sit down and build your Webpack configuration and set up your build and so on. I think that's the killer for a small team.
Also, from Igor's stats on your first day, there's quite a lot of people using it in startups already.
Yeah, and I also mentioned several other options. So the Angular console, Stack Blitz, many of the easier ways to get started with Angular. And with Angular elements and in combination with Ivy, you will also be able to use it on smaller projects where the size is important. So this is definitely something that we want to be more successful at. Enterprise applications is just one aspect that we know that we're doing really well in, but there's a range of other applications and scenarios where we would like to get better at.
It was mentioned Closure Compiler is used to achieve the best bundle sizes, but that there are concessions to adopt it. Is there a plan to provide an easy route?
On the CLI side, we considered it briefly, but we already run into a lot of problems with the way we minify code and the assumptions that we take in using Closure Compiler and trying to make it more usable. Didn't seem like a great time investment at the time. So we kind of scrapped that and tried to use tools that were around and that were a bit more lenient on user code.
I would actually prefer to see a new generation of minifiers and optimizers appear that take the things that Closure Compiler does well without the usability and ergonomics and the fragility issues that we have with Closure Compiler. So Uglify and Terser and other options that we have out there are very approachable, but we know that we can get better results. With tools like Closure, you have to give up a little too much, in my opinion, to be successful with them. So if we could find the balance between the two, that would be the best. But I think that will take really rethinking the approach to minification of JavaScript. And maybe somebody in this crowd is the right person to tackle that on.
Minifier that uses TypeScript files as well, definition files.
Maybe.
How does Ivy affect to Universal? How will we do lazy load imports into Universal?
Lazy loading in Universal basically comes down to require statements, which are already dynamic. So this is not something that you need to be concerned about. It just works.
Nice, easy one for you. What are some common avoidable mistakes in community-generated pull requests?
I'll take
typos.
So some of the common pitfalls are also, thankfully, the easiest ones to avoid. So things like, signing a CLA, contributor licensing agreement, I see a lot of those where people don't sign it. I have a fantastic contribution to make. Wrong format for commit messages. We expect commit messages in a certain format. Things arrive in the wrong format and they get kicked back. So what I would suggest is we have a document, contributor.md, which is actually at the root level of the repository. Take a look at that. That gives you pointers to some of the common artifacts. Be really good to go through that and become familiar with stuff. Those are top things that come to mind.
Yeah, just maybe two things to add to that. One being when you create a PR, it does run through our CI, so pay attention to the CI. Sometimes we get these pull requests, like Manu said, the commit message is wrong. Well, it just like immediately failed on CI, and it's very clear why. Sometimes you'll get into some of the tests that get run, and you might not understand why they fail. Maybe a test is flaky or something, but many of the tests are not flaky. They'll just tell you right away exactly what was wrong, and you can fix it. That allows us to process the PR much, much quicker. And I think the other thing, sometimes we get some really ambitious PRs that, we look at these PRs and people clearly spent many, many, many hours working on a PR because it was a great idea to solve a problem that they had, and it definitely can't be merged, and we feel bad, right? Like, why do we don't want to reject this thing? So if especially when it's like a larger piece of code, try to have a conversation, maybe open an issue, get some dialogue going behind it at least, if you want to try to introduce something relatively large or make like a sweeping change. There's very few of those that just can kind of automatically get merged. They at least need some sort of discussion about like the architecture behind what you're trying to do.
I'm going to also add, keep the pull requests as simple as possible. Sometimes we see that developers create a very simple bug fix, add a test, and also reformat the entire the repository because for whatever reason. Those kind of PRs, they take a lot of cleanup. We often need to remove changes from these PRs. So if you're working on something, try to make the PRs as focused as possible and as small as possible while adding the tests or any kind of required documentation.
Sorry. A good way to do that is to just, when you submit the PR, go and review it yourself afterwards and look at the diff and see if you're changing something which you didn't expect. Like, I think a lot of the reformatting happens when people have specific settings they use in their IDE and they don't really realize that as part of editing this file, the IDE has like reorganized all the imports and done other changes that they weren't expecting.
Yeah, and you can, it's in the documentation somewhere. You can like run yarn gulp format and it'll reformat, it'll undo any changes that you might have done. I think one other thing though is definitely write a test for the PRs. Sometimes we get PRs that don't have a test. But if you don't feel that you can confidently write a test, maybe you don't understand how to test the thing that you're trying to fix, make a comment about that with the PR. At least explain why it doesn't have a test. Maybe some other community member can help with that. Or it just helps us when we take a look at it. We don't just immediately reject it and say, oh, this doesn't have a test, we can't do anything with it. If you say, hey, I really want to fix this thing, I'm having trouble testing it, that would help too.
So we have time for 2 more questions. Are there plans for improved performance test tooling? And does Ivy make some of those use cases easier?
I can answer part of that, but not the Ivy part. And the CLI and the tools team, we've been paying a lot of attention to the performance of our own tools. In the CLI 7, we added the profiling flag to builds so that when people upgrade and they see some kind of performance regression, it's easier for them to send us profiling information that we can take action on. We've started using an internal tool to benchmark memory and CPU consumption and amount of processes spawned for the tools that we're using so that we have a better idea like a better advance warning if these things change in the future. But the Ivy bit does not make up a tea.
On the Ivy side of things, I think that would go in the category of things that we're really excited to think about in the future, whether we can have some kind of performance tracing integration in Ivy.
And don't forget, of course, there was a talk from Wrangle earlier yesterday where they were talking about their tool Augury, and there was an explicit section in there which was a plugin for Chrome and Firefox that will make the performance testing aspects of Chrome more specific to Angular. So I think that would be a really good place to start as well.
Okay, and the last one is for all of you. What is the most important skill of a software developer?
PowerPoint.
So I think at some point, you start working on projects that are bigger than yourself. And you have to collaborate with other people. And being able to express your ideas in a way that's clear and easy for them to understand and grasp, and also to listen to their ideas and maybe recognize when maybe you weren't exactly right about something. That kind of back and forth communication is absolutely critical.
And I want to extend a little bit on the communication for that. A lot of times I'm working with backends as well. So it's not just me talking to another front-end engineer that knows Angular. I'm also talking and need to communicate with the backends that are providing the data. They can create a great API, but if I have to call it 10 times, it doesn't work for us. And so having the communication across different layers in this stack also helps out a lot.
I think two things that I want to mention are think outside of the box and challenge yourself. Doesn't mean that if you did always this thing right like this, it cannot be improved over time. So challenge yourself and think outside of the box. Maybe you can do it better next time.
I would say passion. Do what you like and like what you do. And if you're really invested in what you're developing, you're probably gonna spend time searching for new things, new way to fix bugs, new way to expand new features. Listening to other people talk about the things that you like will give you a lot of good new ideas. So passion is, I think, one of the most important things that we need. If you don't like what you're doing, maybe you should change and find something that you like.
I think I'm going to add empathy. As developers, we often spend a lot of time just reading messages that other people wrote, and it's very easy for us to misinterpret information when we don't get the information accompanied with facial expressions. So what I often see on issue tracker or in code reviews is that somebody leaves a comment and other people get offended or they get aggressive just because they misunderstood the initial comment, and then it turns into a totally unnecessary conflict. If we give benefit of doubt and think about all the possible meanings of a given comment, or when we are writing comment, trying to include as much context as possible, we can avoid these situations. And to do that, we need empathy.
I'd like to add one thing, and that is, in addition to the how, also having an appreciation for the why would be a really good skill to have. And that comes down to the business value of why we do something. Comes down to prioritization, work-life balance, and all those consequences. So that's one thing I'd really like to add. The second thing, to Igor's point, is we live in a virtual world, which means we work across language, geographic boundaries. So having that empathy and understanding the fact that people come from different backgrounds and being aware of that, as we have our online interactions, that would go a long way.
This one probably goes along with what people said at the beginning, but just the ability to ask questions, the ability to ask a question even if you feel uncomfortable asking it. And on the reverse side, the ability to let people ask questions and make them feel okay with any question, whether it seems silly or not. So I think it's really important. Like, that's one thing I've really noticed with people at Google. There's a lot of smart people there, and they really try not to make you feel out of place or stupid for asking a question. And I think that's really important. It allows people to grow.
Be a sponge. Absorb all of the information that you can, and going along with Jason's point of ask those questions so you can get more information out. As an intern, a lot of interns get really intimidated by their director or even their boss or just their coworkers, and kind of like try and stick your neck out and just, I mean, most of you are interns, but this applies to the general population of like ask those questions. Don't afraid of sounding stupid or something like that.
And I think it's very important to be respectful to others, because in a way, so I want to be more explicit here, I feel like often people have different opinions, and I think it's important to also respect those opinions and discuss and see if there is an opinion that both could both agree with. So that's one of the most important things I see in open source.
And unfortunately, that's all we have time for. So let's hear it for the Angular team. Thank you.